The Enchiridion, Section 51, by Epictetus. The first and most necessary topic in philosophy is the practical application of principles, as we ought not to lie. The second is that of demonstrations, as why is it that we ought not to lie? The third, that which gives strength and logical connection to the other two, as why this is a demonstration. For what is a demonstration? What is a consequence? What is a contradiction? What is truth? What is falsehood? The third point is then necessary on account of the second, and the second on account of the first. But the most necessary, and that whereon we ought to rest, is the first. We ought not to lie. But we do just the contrary, for we spend all our time on the third point and employ all our diligence about that, and entirely neglect the first. Therefore, at the same time that we lie, we are very ready to show how it is demonstrated that lying is wrong. Upon all occasions, we ought to have these maxims ready at hand. Conduct me, Zeus, and thou, O destiny, wherever your decrees have fixed my lot. I follow cheerfully, and did I not, wicked and wretched, I must follow still. Whoever yields properly to fate is deemed wise among men and knows the laws of heaven. And this third, O Credo, if it thus please the gods, thus let it be. Anytus and Miletus may kill me indeed, but hurt me they cannot. Now this is the final parable or section of Epictetus's Enchiridion. Marcus Aurelius, another famous Stoic, would have read this and studied this. Note the references to Socrates at the end, where he says, in this third, O Credo, if it thus please the gods, thus let it be. Anytus and Miletus may kill me indeed, but hurt me they cannot. He's referencing the section of the Apology where Socrates says that no harm can befall a good and virtuous man. Note also the subtle reference to Euclid and Euclid's Elements, where he's borrowing the whole notion of logic and demonstrations. When Abraham Lincoln was a young lawyer, somebody asked him to demonstrate something. So he asked him, what does it mean to demonstrate? And someone gave him a copy of Euclid. And so Lincoln would study all the proofs in Euclid's geometry. As part of the Greek mentality, the Euclidean proof and Euclidean logic that carried over into philosophy. Another interesting thing is the sentence just before this final section, or the two sentences in the previous section, are, thus Socrates became perfect, improving himself by everything, following reason alone. And though you are not yet Socrates, you ought, however, to live as one seeking to be Socrates. So Socrates is well known and was the patron saint of Stoicism. He's kind of been tossed around, tossed to the wayside as of recent times, along with the whole idea that the first premise, the first maxim, the primary maxim of Stoicism is telling the truth, as opposed to debating Stoic principles and doing all that. So let us return and read this a little bit more in the context of Euclid and demonstrations and Socrates. Again, section 51 of the Enchiridion begins with, the first and most necessary topic in philosophy is the practical application of principles. What he's saying is, it's all about taking action in principles and not just discussing them. Epictetus continues, as we ought not to lie. The second is that of demonstration. So he's saying, first, you must not lie. Second is, you can talk about or debate why it is that one ought not to lie. And the third, that which gives strength and logical connection to the other two is, why is this a demonstration? So again, he's invoking the whole idea of Euclid and the idea of logically demonstrating things. And he's also invoking the whole idea that the most important part of being a philosopher is not just thought alone, but it's actually action and speaking the truth, and not just talking about the importance of speaking the truth. Then he talks about, for what is demonstration? What is consequence? What a contradiction? What truth? What falsehood? The third point is then necessary on account of the second, and the second on account of the first. But the most necessary, and that whereon we ought to rest, is the first. We ought not to lie. But we do just the contrary. He talks about how so often people tell a lot of lies, but then they'll write a book of maxims and market it as Stoicism, even using lies in marketing. For we spend all of our time on the third point and employ all our diligence about that and entirely neglect the first. Therefore, at the same time that we lie, we are very ready to show how it is demonstrated that lying is wrong. So it's that whole idea that people will say lying's wrong, and yet they're still lying to profit and make money. But that's not what true Stoicism is all about. Then he talks about, upon all occasions, we ought to have these maxims ready at hand. And in the comments, you can tell me where this next maxim comes from. Conduct me, Zeus, and thou, O destiny, wherever your decrees have fixed my lot, I follow cheerfully. And did I not wicked and wretched, I must follow still. Whoever yields properly to fate is deemed wise among men, and knows the laws of heaven. So a lot of people say the Stoics don't believe in God, or they didn't believe in gods, but here he is basically offering a prayer and homage up to Zeus, the highest of the Greek gods. And finally, he ends with a reference to the patron saint of Stoicism. It was actually, the history of Stoicism was that Zeno was shipwrecked, and he came across a bookseller and found a book on Socrates and was amazed at the stories and parables and the dialogues. And he started asking around, who is this fellow? And so all of Stoicism was inspired. He had to teach all of these fundamental tenets, and he didn't have a university or anything, but he had a porch. So Stoa means porch, and hence the name Stoicism was born. And it was born because of Socrates. And so it's quite fitting that the very last sentence in Epictetus's Enchiridion is this. And this third, O Credo, if it thus pleases the gods, thus let it be. Anitus and Miletus may kill me indeed, but hurt me they cannot. Now, of course, Socrates has been sentenced for death for his simple maxim teaching that all money and wealth derive from virtue, and virtue does not derive from money, wealth, position, reputation, and all that, but rather the pursuit of virtue, however elusive it is, the pursuit of virtue and excellence and arete, that is the true source of all wealth. It's not the marketing, lies, and hype and all those things. And interestingly enough, Steve Jobs once said that he would trade all of his technology to spend a single afternoon with Socrates. So in my next video, I'll be devoting more time to Socrates' Apology and some of the sections in it that were referenced directly by Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics, and where the whole spirit and foundational premise of Stoicism comes from. And we'll also see how interesting it is that Socrates also stood on the shoulders of giants, and he references the courage of Achilles when he has a choice to die. If he doesn't recant his teachings and say, look, what I was teaching was wrong, or he can live if he recants all of his teachings. But Socrates says, referencing Achilles, the greatest hero in Greek mythology, who returned to battle knowing that he would die, he said, Achilles would look down on me if I turned away from battle knowing that I would die. So he likened philosophy to a noble act, kind of like a poet warrior on the front lines of thought, a battle. And he said that Achilles didn't fear death when he returned to battle to avenge his friend, and nor did Socrates fear death. So he would not recant the maxims he was teaching about virtue, and they put him to death. And Socrates concludes in those lines that are referenced by Epictetus. And this third, O Credo, if it thus pleases the gods, thus let it be. Anytus and Miletus may kill me indeed, but hurt me they cannot.